o'clock. I think I can call that time there. So I can see people are still joining. So I'm sure a lot of it will speak for itself. So welcome everyone. This is our first proper Innovation Friday from online. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if any of you have joined us for an Innovation Friday before, but it's usually very different to my lovely lounge. And we are based in Leicester Innovation Hub. So that normally takes place the last Friday of every month. I'm going to quickly move on just to make sure we stick to the agenda, because I know some people will be joining based on what talk they want to see on the agenda. So before I kind of introduce the agenda for the day, I'm just going to move on to a message from our business manager at the Innovation Hub. So hopefully this works without any technical issues. Open hyperlink. Just let that load. Oh, not responding. Typical.
Hi everyone,
So again, hopefully you can all hear this. It should be able to play through this absolutely fine.
Hi everyone, my name's Rajinder Bui. I am the Innovation Hub Manager here at the Leicester Innovation Hub, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Innovation Friday. It's a little strange doing this by video, and for the time being I think this is becoming the norm. And so I think all of us are getting new skills and new ways of working during this time of social distancing and lockdown. Ordinarily, as you know, Innovation Friday is about bringing businesses, entrepreneurs, academics, students and our startups together to have conversations around innovation. In the current environment, we are pleased that we've been able to move this activity, and really thankful that technology is enabling us to bring together our enthusiastic and active community for today's event. We are facing unprecedented impact on both economy and businesses, and we have had a number of businesses contact us really looking at how they can accelerate their innovation ambitions and really look at how the challenges of COVID can be overcome. The Leicester Innovation Hub are all working from home and very much adapted our delivery to enable your innovation ambitions and really work with you during this time whilst we're working from home. Innovation Friday really remains one of our regular engagement platforms for us to share good practice and enable the community to meet, have a chance to discuss new ideas, ideas that you've wanted to get underway, and really have the chance to discuss those both one-to-one and also ask questions about any developments that you're making in regards to those. I hope you enjoy this insightful talk we've got lined up for today. Do take advantage of this afternoon's networking opportunities. I wish you a really good day and look forward to seeing you in person in the near future. Thank you, and look after yourselves. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cool. So that was a message from our business manager. As Rajinder said, we are open for business as such. At the Innovation Hub, we're all working from home, and we made the decision to take Innovation Friday online due to the demand for supporting businesses throughout this time with innovation. And we decided to focus this month's talks on delivering value online and pivoting a business model, obviously in line with the current situation. So it's going to be a bit different if you've ever been before. It's quite entertaining to know that some people might be attending Innovation Friday in their dressing gown this month. So I'll just move on to the agenda. So to begin with, after I've introduced, we will be moving on to Anne, Anne's the founding and managing director of Anicca Digital. She'll be taking you through some tips on maximising your digital marketing during this situation, and that will be looking at whether you have a marketing budget or you don't. From that, we'll be moving on to Oscar Ford, and he will be talking you through any quick wins that you can have at the moment with your your digital marketing. And to finish off, it will be Tobias from the Innovation Hub. He's our Business Innovation Fellow, and he will be going through how you could innovate your business model and look at pivoting. All of them will be talks as such, one to many, but we have the opportunity to Q&A at the end. So as you will see on your screens, there is a Q&A bot as such. So please feel free to fill questions up throughout that. And then at the end of every talk, I'll spend sort of 10-15 minutes just reading questions to the speaker to get them to answer 3 or 4 questions. As you can see as well, and as Rajinder mentioned, we have a range of experts, fellows and speakers as well joining us for networking and one-to-one support. So if you would like to book onto any sessions with the speakers or our academics, then please do follow the link that I will put in the chat box on the booking form, and that's basically to just have a nice 10-minute meet someone new, talk through any challenges you've got, and maybe get some expertise from them as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping or homekeeping in this circumstance. So the Zoom link will remain the same throughout the day, well, the morning. So if you were planning on only joining Tobias's talk and you've accidentally logged in at 10 and don't want to hear anything from Anne, which I can't imagine is true, then just head back in. Likewise, if you drop out, you can just use the same link that was circulated via the Eventbrite. You just drop them into the Q&A bot, stack that up, and I'll read it out when people have finished talking. The link to book those one-to-ones I just mentioned will be open until 12 p.m. today, and I will have that link in the chat bot once Anne begins talking. And after this webinar closes from your computer, it should take you straight through to the feedback form, which we'd really appreciate you filling out so that we can make sure that the future Innovation Fridays that are very likely to be virtual again to your taste and include the things that you find relevant at this difficult time. So I think on that note, I can say over to you, Anne. I shall stop sharing my screen.
Thank you.
And move to you.
We do have a bit of a problem with the quality. I have actually invested in fibre, so hopefully when I start sharing my screen, we should get slightly better quality. Okay, so can you all see my screen? Can you?
I can, yes.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, well, thanks everybody. I'm going to be talking about some tips on digital marketing during the Corona lockdown. I've taken the view that some of you will have no budget at all and some of you will have a budget. So I've sort of split it into 2. You're looking there at our pub, our old pub, which is actually our office. We're on Frog Island, and that's some of the team below. We've actually got quite an open plan office, so hopefully we might get back there in the next month or 2, but I've actually quite enjoyed working from home. Been disturbed by the cats, but missing my grandkids very badly, and you can see behind me I've got pictures of my grandchildren. Anyway, a little bit about me. So I actually came to Leicester University 40 years ago to do biology. So I started off my career as a scientist, and I've lived in Leicester ever since. You can see the team over here. I'm sort of quite a bit of a rock fan. This is my hubby here. This is my family, my grandkids. I'm also a Formula 1 fan, so I'm missing that as well. And I've got a couple of massive Maine Coons. They're about twice as big as that. You can also see in the middle the Drum Awards. This is the award that we won last year for some work that we did on integrating sales and leads data. And so it's sort of just indicative of the type of work that we do at Anicca, which covers a whole range of services in digital marketing. And this is just some of the clients that we work with. So I'm not really here to sort of sell our services. In fact, the opposite today. I've got quite a lot of freebies to give you. So I'm going to just dive in and get on with the content. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today then. So the first section is going to cover the reasons why you should maintain or increase your marketing during a recession, and particularly during the lockdown. I've also got some figures with regards to some areas that have been really badly hit and some areas that are actually doing really well. A little bit of a section on adjusting to the lockdown and communicating with clients, and then what you should do if you've got no marketing budget at all, but you've got plenty of time on your hands. I obviously realise that quite a few people have been furloughed, and that does make it quite difficult to communicate with people sometimes because their email addresses aren't necessarily working. But if you have got some budget, then there's some things you should do. It could be that you need to amend what you're currently doing, or you could invest in some new stuff. And then there's some other activities that you can do now as well. Okay, so let's just dive straight in. So first of all, this is some research. There's quite a lot of research actually on the impact of marketing during a recession and what happens when people, take away the marketing and don't invest. And the various different studies on the left here, which you can click through to when you get the slides. But you'll see in the graph on the right that the people that actually don't completely slow down actually tend to do better in the recovery area. And the clue is really all in the sort of concept of outmaneuvering your competitors. So in other words, really what you should be doing is you need to be looking around at what your other competitors are doing in your market and making sure that you do more marketing than they do. The concept of keeping the lights on is also quite often used as well. One of the other things that you'll see from this data is the huge swings in demand for certain products. So I've chosen sort of two examples from some of the clients that we work with. So fitness equipment is the one on the left, and then this is the actual increase in searches just for this term. And then this is for a group of key phrases around that subject. So for fitness equipment on its own, we've seen a 653% increase on month-on-month searches. Whereas if you look on the right, you can see a 50% decrease for searches relating to restaurants near me. In fact, I thought this would be lower than this, but obviously some restaurants are still doing deliveries. So I don't think it's been quite as badly hit as some of the other examples I'm going to show you later on. Another thing is there's lots of opportunities, and you can see some examples here of where people have taken up those opportunities, and then as a result of that, they've got some really great PR. So there's been quite a lot of talk about hand sanitizers, and the breweries going over in that direction. I think Brewdog got a real start on this, although evidently the NHS didn't actually use their product, which is quite interesting. I don't think it came up to the required standards that was required for NHS use, but of course it was still used by the public. And then Burberry have been mentioned in numerous news reports about making scrubs in their factory, and I know quite a few other factories have done the same. Now, the opposite is also true. There's been some really bad behaviour and some terrible PR. I picked out probably the ones that I remember the most. I never really think of Britannia hotels before, but now I associate that with the terrible images of them basically kicking all their workers out, and a lot of them didn't have anywhere else to go because, of course, they lived on the premises, and that's got loads of bad press. Richard Branson has really come in for a terrible kicking. The fact that he's a taxile outside of the UK and he wants bailouts. That everybody's taken this quite personally, and there's been lots and lots of petitions against him. Wetherspoons and Sports Directs, they've had quite a lot of bad publicity as well. Wetherspoons not paying their staff and their suppliers, and then Sports Direct asking people to continue working and not being able to keep to the 2 metre sort of social distancing rules. So, you can get it really badly wrong as well as really badly right, or really, very good. And so you do need to be careful that, you do keep an eye on what social media is saying about you, because obviously if you get it wrong, it can be quite costly. One of the things that you do need to do is consider what your competitors are doing. And I'm going to show you a few tools that you can use. So I'm going to try and do some stuff that you can actually go back and check when you get back, back to your laptops. And one of the ideas here is to overtake your competitors or do at least the same as they're doing. So instead of using my own competitors, I decided to use De Montfort University and Leicester University as a comparison. And the first thing I did was I just typed their brand in Google, and then I went to the news tab. And you can see this on the left for Leicester and on the right for De Montfort University. I've actually got qualifications from both universities. So, although I went to Leicester University first, I am quite good friends with De Montfort University and I teach there as well. So I'm going to be quite nice to De Montfort University. But anyway, you can see some of the publicity and some of the PR that they've been doing and the mentions they've got in the press. So I think that's a very good starting point, is to do some Google searches and see what your competitors are up to. Another thing that you may not be aware of is that you can actually see what advertising your competitors are doing as well. And I think this is a really useful tool that you should be aware of now, but also you can use in the future going forward. And this is on the left-hand side it's called the Facebook ads library. And what you do is when you go to this link, there's a search box, and I just put in De Montfort University, and I could see all of the ads that they're running. And they really are trying to take advantage of the situation, and they've been talking about their donations of masks and things to the NHS. And then on the right hand side, what I've done is I've gone into LinkedIn to see what advertising is going on as well. And what you have to do here is you have to go to the business page of that particular brand of your competitor or the person you're doing the research on. So you can see on the right hand side, on the De Montfort University business page. And then on the left-hand side, you can see that there's an ads tab, and that allows you to see what ads they're running. The other one that might be worth mentioning while I'm here is the Insights tab. If you've got a premium account, which is the sort of $59 a month for Sales Navigator or LinkedIn Premium, you can also see the number of staff that people employ. Once a business has got more than 30 employees, you can see the month-on-month increase and decrease of staff. So this is another good way of keeping an eye on your competitors, particularly if they're making people redundant, as there might be some opportunities to recruit some talent if we get to the other side of this, all in a positive way. Another thing that a lot of people have talked about is the fact that cheaper advertising is during a recession. Now, I did quite a lot of research on this yesterday, and what I did find was that generally across nearly all of our Facebook accounts, we did see quite a significant drop in CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. So you can see in this particular account, we're down to about 5, and previously we've been as high as 15. And similarly over here, you can see we've had up to sort of £12, and we're now less than £5. LinkedIn is the same; it's sort of dropped, but it's also similar, around about £5 cost per 1,000. And I know in previous times that's been as high as £20 a 1,000. The one that I had more difficulty in finding reductions in cost per click was actually Google. And I had to look through quite a lot of accounts to find accounts where the cost per click had dropped down. And this was one of them. Now, that's partially due to the fact that some sectors, people are actually spending more money and are actually bidding quite competitively because there's a shortage of customers. So although lots of people have stopped their bidding and aren't actually running ads at the moment, some of them are. And where there is an increase in competition, I've actually seen an increase in cost per click. So don't take it for granted that in your sector the cost per click will be lower. There is a little bit of a rule of thumb here that although the cost per thousands are going down, sometimes if you have got a lot of ads running, you might want to switch to a cost per click model where you can. Massively increased, and we're probably talking about 50% twice the amount of traffic sorry, amount of traffic at the moment. And of course, if more people are online and there's more traffic, that means that if you're paying on a cost per thousand basis, you could be getting to a heck of a lot more people, and they're not necessarily going to be as relevant as the people you want to target. Another thing that you might want to consider during this period is the concept of karma, which is the approach that we took right from day one. And we got in really early. You can see that this LinkedIn post is actually a month old. And what I started to do was I started to offer our services for free, and by giving 1 hour calls. And I'm continuing to do that. And in fact, you're going to be able to take advantage of that and be able to book a call with me as well. And you can do that on my calendly.com address if you want to make a note of that now. So that's calendly.com/Anne-Stanley. Now you can see on the right some of the comments that we got back. And I think this is just because we were one of the first to do this. And I have seen a few more people do this, but interestingly, not as many people in the UK doing this as perhaps some of my overseas colleagues, which is quite surprising. But I think it's just because in the UK, a lot of people have been furloughed and therefore they're not actually active, or they can't be active. So you can see the sorts of comments here on the right hand side, which we've got. And I've probably had about 10 calls with people so far, and I'm just about at the point where I can start to do calls again, which is what we've organised with the Innovation Centre. So let's talk about some of the things that you might need to do to actually adjust to the actual lockdown and communicating with the clients. So hopefully you've done a lot of this already, but if not, there's some checklists here that you can use to actually sort of make sure that your clients know what's going on. So first of all, sort of general content and checking what you're doing and what's on your website. So first of all, you probably need to update your opening times on the website, any footers, Google My Business pages, Bing, etc. And your social profiles, just to let people know whether you're working or not. And if you're working from home, you might not change your business hours, but the fact that you're working from home. You might want to put any changes to operation procedures out there, including any FAQs. This is particularly important, for example, if you're e-commerce and your delivery, you usually offer next day delivery, but your delivery times are taking a little bit longer because of demand. You also want to make the links pretty prominent on your homepage so that people can see them. Maybe change the color or something like that, so that if you have got any notices or FAQs, they can see those. Another thing that you might want to look at is some of the stuff that you do on a regular basis. So this could be paid content, which I'll come back to in a minute, sponsorship, any partnerships. We use a heck of a lot of tools, particularly SEO tools. So you might want to pause some of those contracts or try and get a payment holiday. Some of them are doing that quite generously. And actually a lot of tool suppliers are offering free use of their tools for 3 months. So it's quite a good time to test tools that you might want in the future. And I think probably the most important thing is to stick an autoresponder on. All of our staff have got an autoresponder on, whether they're working or not. And actually we've made it pretty universal, so it doesn't single individuals out. It makes it a little bit more awkward for individuals. If they've been furloughed, they may feel a bit embarrassed about it. So we've got an autoresponder that covers everybody, and so everybody gets that, apart from if they email me, because I'm online all the time. And they basically say that we'll get back to people as soon as possible, and it might be someone else depending on the circumstances, because we're all working at home. So I think if you've not done any of this, you really need to go back and check a lot of those. Similarly, social media is great for customer communication and customer service, and there's some tips here that you might want to do just to sort of make sure that you're using social media as the power of social media. So first of all, just update all your social accounts as well. Mention any delivery or stock issues. One of our biggest clients actually had to stop advertising early on, not because there wasn't an increase in demand, it's one of the fitness ones, but actually they couldn't get the stock from out of Asia. So there's been lots of issues that hit quite early that not necessarily related as to all being in the lockdown. Another thing you might want to consider is using social media actually to do your customer service. This is particularly important if you run a call centre, and it might be more difficult for people to get hold of your staff because they'll be working at home. So, you know, DMing on social media, it's a lot easier to manage that from home than it is a call centre technology. If you're using something like Hootsuite or Sprout Social, then you can use that for scheduling a lot of your social media posts. I think that would be quite useful. And if you've got a very large customer base and they've got a lot of ongoing concerns, then it might be worth starting a Facebook or a LinkedIn group, so you can sort of take it out in the public eye and talk to people more in a private group where the information is useful for everybody. And then it just keeps it a bit more private and a little bit more personal, and also, you know, it shows you cares. Another thing that might happen is that a lot of the chats, online chats, are often linked to Facebook Messenger, or you might have Facebook Messenger as your sort of main form of communication. Now, what you might find is that a bit like your email, you'll get inundated with messages and you might not be able to answer them very promptly or as promptly as you normally would. So it's in the same way as having an automatic reply on your email. I definitely recommend that you have an automatic reply on your messenger as well. Another thing that you want to do is check out what's actually happening in analytics, because this is a really good way of sort of understanding, and I've got some examples to show you in a minute. So use the annotation functionality, which means you can actually mark the date that things have happened. So things like reducing your ad spend or office hours or working from home. Also, you can set up alerts. So you may have done this already, or you may need to redo this now. So for example, if you're one of the examples where traffic has dropped, if it increases again, you need to know about it. So you can get that in as an email. And also you need to sort of actually interrogate your analytics in a little bit more detail and see if they're searching on different products or landing on different content. And just generally understanding what they're actually doing your site. And I've got a couple of examples to show you. This is using the acquisition tab on the left hand side of analytics, and you can see I'm in all traffic and I'm in channels. And what I've got here is 4 examples from 1st of January up until yesterday, on a day-by-day basis to see how they've been affected. So the first one is an example of a company that provides postal services, which can be worked at home as well as from the office. And you can see as soon as the lockdown, there was a massive spike in activity. But of course, at the weekends, there's very little activity. This is the fitness equipment one I was mentioned earlier on. You can actually see sort of up until the middle of March, it slowed down a little bit. Now that's partly due to the fact that they took off quite a lot of their advertising, turned it off because they didn't have any stock. But as soon as we all went into lockdown, they got a massive spike without actually needing to spend as much money on advertising. So this is another thing you need to look at, because it might be that your organic traffic actually compensates for any stopping of your advertising. This is recruitment. This is a specialist recruitment company that does a lot of contract and agency work in warehouses and industry. So they've not been hit as quietly as badly as I thought they would have done, and they've lost about 1/3 of their traffic. And again, you know, quite a big sort of, you know, pretty characteristic drop at the weekends. And then the one that I was a little bit surprised about was promotional goods, because that happened very, very early on. They actually saw their traffic drop off really early on. They then stopped their advertising about this time as well. And that was because a lot of events were being cancelled, and because promotional goods happen quite a lot in advance. As soon as people started cancelling events, and this was international events as well, their business dropped through the floor. And you can see that, you know, even this is quite an established business, they've had a big knock-on effect from that. Okay, so what should you do if you've got no marketing budget but lots of time on your hands? So the first thing is to sort of sort out your housekeeping. So one of the things you can do is to audit your site and any marketing that you've done in the past, because that's a good way of sort of working out what you should do in the future. So this is a link to our A10 marketing framework, which you can download, and it's a 10-step process that I've developed. It's actually a a 50-page a brochure. I do have some hard copies, so there is the opportunity to order one of those, but obviously we'll send them later on. I'll drop some off at the Innovation Centre so that you guys can pick them up later. But if you use this, you'll notice that in section 1 particularly, there's a whole load of free tools. And in actual case, the PDF version is easier to use because you can just click on the links and then you can run your site through these free auditing tools. There's also some paid tools in there as well and some recommendation. This is quite a long read and I wouldn't suggest you do it all at once, but it is something you could be working on. And it does apply to both digital marketing and offline marketing. So you can use it across the board. Another thing that you might want to do, and we did this, or we're still working on this, is updating all our content. And there's 2 things you should really do with this. Is first of all, go to the main pages in your navigation and follow the links. But also use analytics to review what the most important page. So just to show you where to find that in analytics, again, if you go on the left-hand side, you've got the section called behavior. So the way that Google works, it's ABC. So it's audience acquisition, which we were just in, behavior and conversion. So I'm in the behavior section, insight content, and then I've gone to all pages. And then you can see the pages that are generating most of the page views. So the top one is the home page, and the second one is actually a brand new blog that we wrote right at the beginning of the crisis. I think before the official lockdown happened. And so you can see that that's actually getting huge amounts of traffic. So although I'd expect our traffic to have gone down, because there's so many people looking for content, we've actually had an increase in content during this period. But I can look at this and look at the ones and decide if any of those need rewriting. And there's quite a lot of new activities that you can do as well. Some of these I actually do already, but some of them you might not do at the moment. So I thought I'd give you a few that you could go and have a look at. So first of all, SEO tasks. So this is some comments from our head of SEO, Suk. And what he was noticing was that ad spend was being reduced or cut. Some people were actually seeing quite significant increases in their organic listings because there was basically a gap where the paid listings were before. And it's definitely a time to look at relevant content and fix any technical issues, see if you can get any links from anywhere else. Some of the work that we've been doing is working on FAQ sections and sort of trying to create new content. And the FAQs is quite useful, even if it doesn't cover any SEO benefits, but it does help clients and it can help staff as well. This is some examples of the content that we wrote early on, one of which I think we just saw in the analytics data. So I do think that if you are going to write this content, in some respects, you may be a bit late now. Please don't sort of write another guide to virtual meetings or virtual conferences, because there's so many out there, and coping from working at home. So many people have written content all that already that if you write it now, you'll probably just be wasting your time. You really need to come in with a completely new angle. But it's a good idea to sort of come out with new topics that you can work on. And just generally what you're trying to be doing is support your community and build that brand and loyalty. Once you've got your content, so I've got 2 examples from our blog here, you then need to distribute it. So obviously you can use things like LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. But the other thing I've been doing a lot of is email marketing. I've actually been doing email marketing on a weekly basis, because we've got lots to talk about, and also we're promoting our webinars, which I'll talk about as well. And today, normally we would do a webinar on a Friday morning at 9 o'clock, but this one we're doing in collaboration with the Leicester Innovation Centre, which thank you very much for that, Ellie. I forgot to thank you at the beginning.
No problem.
Some of the other things that you can do for free, so this is some more organic traffic and things you can do, is testing email. So if you're not doing email already, it's a really good chance to start. Obviously you do sort of need a list, and I know that with GDPR last year, 2 years ago now, May 2018 I think it was, you need to build your list up again. But if you have got a small list, even if it's only existing clients, you can use MailChimp for free if you've got less than 2,000 recipients. So definitely go and check that out. The advantage of MailChimp is really easy to use, and there's loads and loads of templates. So you can create an email, and I would always recommend having something like I showed you just a minute ago, where you've got a title, an image, and a little snippet, but it goes off to your website, because what you really want to be doing is getting people back to your website. And the reason why you want to get them back to your website is because A, you can track it, but also you see here at the bottom, I mentioned the Facebook pixel. If they've been back to your site, then you can also do ad marketing, advertising or remarketing to them later. If you have any links you want to use UTM codes, this is a tracking code. So this is the example from one in this week's email, or the April email, and it's got the source's email, the medium is newsletter, and the campaign was April. I can't see the date because I've got the, April the 23rd. So this is from yesterday's email. You've also got to upload your list, and this will be in the format of a CSV file. And if you've uploaded your list, you then map it to the fields in MailChimp or whatever system you're using. That's my cat coming to say hello. You want to test your emails. Definitely check the mobile version. Most people will be looking at the mobile, their emails on mobile. And then you want to send your email. Be careful when you send it. I recommend you send it between sort of 11 and 1 o'clock-ish. That way, you know, people are taking breaks for lunch, and they will check their emails. The only thing at the moment is that a lot of email lists are based on people having their work emails, which means that you may get a lot of out of office, which I'm finding I'm getting a big chunk of out of office. So you can see in the performance here, I've only got 26% opening rate, and normally when I send an email in work time, that could be as high as 40%. So I'm obviously suffering a little bit with people, you know, not there, and effectively soft bounces. But I did get a good click-through rate of 2.5%, which is pretty good for an email. You know, you typically get 1 to 5%, but 2.5% is on the better half of that. And then if you are doing any advertising, make sure you've got the Facebook pixel on the website, because that allows you to do remarketing. And then this is just some examples of the results from the email that I sent out on the 23rd, which was yesterday. And you can see the number I sent, the numbers that actually were delivered, the numbers opened, and the click-through rate. And if you delve into this report, you can actually see what they clicked on and who clicked on what. Another thing that I've never done, which is ridiculous, and the amount of presentations and reports and, you know, conferences that I do, I've really done very, very few webinars before. And I was actually involved in an international conference that was always planned to be a virtual conference, actually, and that was before the lockdown. And there was over 4,000 people on that webinar. And I thought, well, if they can do it, we can do it, because we've got so much content. We were also running something called the Marketing Forum with the Chamber, which is the East Midlands Chamber of Commerce, which we're patrons of. And they've actually got loads of useful resources if you want to go and see what they're doing. And that's at the East Midlands Chamber and the e-Business Club website. So we decided to host some webinars. So this effectively is our third one. We had Easter in the way, which sort of messed it up a little bit. So here's some tips on running a webinar. So if you don't want to spend any money, you can do what we're doing today, which is to use Zoom. And that can be used for up to 100 people. However, I did actually purchase a paid version of software. I've bought Big Marker for running my webinars, because it's got lots and lots of features. You can create lots of different types of webinars. You've got the recording, you've got the registration page. This is our channel page on the left-hand side. And I've also got some widgets on the anicca.co.uk/webinars-videos page as well. This is a YouTube of a guy that's done an incredible job of reviewing nearly all of the webinar software. He spent hours on this last year. This is the roundup webinar, and then there's individual webinars in each of the different paid systems. And that's why I ended up choosing Big Marker, but there's lots of other ones, and it might be that others are more suitable for your needs. So of course, the first thing you need to do is prepare your slides and any supporting content. I typically recommend you allow about 30 to 40 slides per hour, and then that should give you enough time for Q&A at the end. You need to create a landing page within the platform, and this is used for registrations. In Innovation Centre, what they've done is they also created an Eventbrite page. We also create a meetup page because we run Leicester Digital, and Leicester Digital used to meet monthly, and so we're also advertising the webinars on there as well. Once you've got some people registered, you can then promote it to the people that registered and came to the previous ones as well. You then got to create some ads and social posts, so it's definitely worth investing in something like Canva, where you can just create some pretty pictures. You know, some of these ones like this one here on the left, free webinar, that's just using some stock photography, a big blob, a video, and then just some sort of imagery, so it just brightens it up a little bit. And then you need to promote the webinar through all your community channels. And I do recommend you present with a co-host. So although Ellie's let me just get on with this because of the functionality within this, if you've got two presenters, you can ask each other questions. It's a little bit more interactive. And then also, as Ellie will do so in a minute, she can answer the Q&A and manage the chat as well while I'm presenting. So it's quite difficult to manage the chat with this software. Zoom's particularly bad for this, whereas some of the other ones, because all I can see on my slides, I can't see what you guys are saying about me and whether you like what I'm saying or not. So hopefully you do. And then
it's nothing mean, I promise.
I'm glad about that. And then at the end, you need to circulate the recording, which of course Ellie's not mentioned, but the slides will be available and the recording will be available as well. Oops, my screen's now frozen. Okay, another thing you can do is PR. So PR is a technique that you tend to only do if you're a specialist of, or you play as a sort of a hobby at, because you've got to have a list of journalists, or you've got to know who to contact, or you've got to use some software to find them out, or use things like Twitter when they're looking for journo stories and help the journalist out. You know, there's lots of hashtags around journalism when the people are looking for stories. So I got Sarah Ross, who's our PR specialist, to give me a couple of tips. And her first reaction was actually most people stopped their PR as soon as this happened, unless they were in relevant industries. And the reason was that there was just no space in the news feed for any other stories apart from coronavirus ones. So actually, to start with, it was really difficult to get any airtime. But it is important that you keep up to date with what's happening and start to look at, trade media, lifestyle and regional titles. And what you'll see now is that the outlets are starting to adapt their content. And journalists are now looking for much more variety of stories, practical advice, but more positive news stories. So they don't want the doom and gloom. They want to cheer people up. So if you're doing anything for the community, or you've done anything, that you're proud of, you should really talk to the local newspapers, the radio, the BBC or whatever, and see if you can get your stories out there. And we will help people. If you think you've got a really good story, and you think that it would warrant a couple of hours send it to a couple of our content, then I'm quite happy to give you a hand on that. Sarah's actually really, really busy because she's having to deal with sort of crisis comms as well, but I'm sure we can, if there's any really good stories, I'm happy to try and get it on air for you. Another thing you need to do is look at consumer behavior, sort of understand what's happening. And a lot of people have written a lot of content early on about things like working from home and cutting your hair and cooking with the stuff that's in your cupboard, and there are some good examples out there, but it's almost too late to do those now. You need to be thinking of new things because everybody's already done that. And you can use Google Trends for inspiration, give you ideas of what people are looking for and what trends there are, and the same tools that you would use for Google search. Another thing that you might want to do is, and we did get this early on, tips for holding a virtual meeting, because we did that really on. It worked, but if you don't do it early enough, you won't get the same effect, which I think is why our marketing in the coronavirus, because we did that before most people were locked down, it got visibility in Google and then got quite a lot of traction. Palex, who we work with, who are just over near Colville, they did a Love Logistics campaign, which was colouring in for kids, with lots of big bright lorries, and that's actually got quite a lot of exposure as well, because it's just bright and colourful and very optimistic. Okay, so that's the freebies. I'm sure there's lots of other things you might want to do, and what it would be quite useful is if anybody's done anything else that they'd like to mention, is to add it in the chat. There's a few other things in the final section that I may be covering, but please do contribute, because I think there'll be some quite helpful advice that you can give each other. But what about if you've actually got some marketing budget then? So first of all, you really need to understand when you should pause or reduce your advertising. Now, some people are just not selling anything. So if you've lost all your sales and you've got absolutely no money to advertise at all, then you're better off focusing on the previous activities and you know, spend time on organic or free stuff. But if you have, you know, if you normally rely on things like shopping ads and direct response, where people basically buy on price, if people have stopped you know, not buying, you know, they're searching but they're not buying, then you might as well turn that budget off as well, because they're going to have forgotten you in a month's time. And then what happens is that when you start advertising again, they'll buy then. So it's not really worth advertising unless people are buying. That is quite a good rule of thumb. You should try and pay on a cost per click basis rather than the cost per impression basis, because you may not be getting buyers. You might be just getting browsers or lots of views of your ads, but not necessarily anybody buying. Sorry, carry on, Ellie. You might want to redirect your budget to products or services that are popular rather than stopping altogether. And you do need to keep your ads running, particularly around brands phrases. So this concept of keeping the lights on, I think, is really important. And if you know that your competitors are aggressively marketing, then you probably need to try and find some money from somewhere to make sure that you've got you know, a presence that's similar to them, even if you can't outcompete them. In some cases, you may want to maintain or increase your advertising budgets. A good example is if your competitors are bidding. So in this case, I've searched on Pitney Bowes' Frankie machine, and you can see Pitney Bowes ads there, but Neopost is there as well. Now, they could be bidding just on Frankie machine and being shown for this, but what would happen if Pitney Bowes wasn't doing an ad and Neopost were, then that would push down Pitney Bowes' organic ads. So it is important that you defend your position in Google. You definitely should increase your ad spend if there's increased demand and searches. If you want to increase awareness and market share at this time, if you want to enter new markets or offer new products. There's also deals to be had. There's quite a lot of offers, deals in the local paper, trade press. There's some free space or cheap space in online media. If you've got a larger budget, if you've got a bit of a war chest that you've squirreled away, then you might want to test some new channels such as Spotify or AdSmart. Now, AdSmart is Sky's TV solution, and believe it or not, you can do that from only 3K. Now, I also know that if you're doing anything for the local community and you've got some really good stories, they are offering a significant discount. So if you want to contact me about that afterwards and you want to do some TV advertising for maybe the first time, and you know you've got something to shout about, then let me know, and then I can pass you on to my contact at Sky. Tips on managing your ads. I'm not going to go through this in any detail now, because I think this is really very specific for the people that are actually running Google ads and Facebook ads, but it's all to do with adjusting your ads and your keywords. This is a good checklist to come back to afterwards. You know, think about long term. Watch what's happening if you're doing international marketing. Of course, the local conditions are changing much more rapidly overseas. You know, react to the market conditions. You might want to pause specific elements. You can label parts, you can turn them back on again. We are seeing increasing click-through rates. That's the proportion of people clicking on ads. And across most sectors, there have been some drops in cost per clicks, but in other sectors, actually, it's gone the other way. So just be careful on that, because if there's a lot of competition, then cost per clicks could go up. You want to look at your ads and messages, make sure it's sensitive, make sure you've not written anything that's, you know, completely inappropriate for this time. Update all your business information, particularly delivery and stuff like that. You also need to review your bidding strategy and your budgets. You might be better off doing manual bidding because the data's fluctuating up and down really badly, and you might want to, you know, make some efficiencies, you know, test out what services are working and put budget and move money around, which perhaps you wouldn't have done in the past. Google's also got some offers. They're gonna, if you did any advertising in 2019, you might find you get some credits in your account. So even if you stop advertising now, you might find that there's a free credit which you'll be able to use. It's not actually live yet, but I know it's come in. Similarly, they have announced this week that Google Shopping ads are going to be free. So this is the stuff at the top where you see the images of products. We're definitely going to be helping people on getting those live. So even if you've not done advertising before, this is what it used to be like 5 years ago. You can basically create a product feed from your e-commerce website, and you need to create a Google Merchant Center to advertise your products in shopping. We think it's going to be a freemium model, so there'll be payment for the top positions because they need to make some money somehow. But my colleague Holly has written a blog about this, so if you're interested in what's going on, you can click on this and finding out a little bit help. And we're also offering free advice on setting up free Google Shopping, although at the moment it's not in the UK. We will probably get beta tested it because we are a Google partner. But we will definitely be making people aware when this becomes live. Another thing you want to do is review your paid social advertising, whether this is Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. Most people are doing Facebook and Instagram advertising at the moment, maybe even Pinterest. You do want to look at your budgets. I'm actually spending more on paid social at the moment because the cost for clicks and the cost for actions are much cheaper. I'm mainly promoting the A10 booklet because I can get email addresses and then I can contact people. So it works very well in conjunction with the webinars. You've got to review your tests and test your ad messages. You can even try new formats. You can create remarketing audience based on the people that have engaged with your ads, perhaps people that have viewed 50% of your video. And then you also want to spend this time building your organic following so that you know, you can run sequential advertising later on. Facebook are also offering business grants, but it's not in the UK yet. This is where you can register your interest and you can basically get an email once it comes through. Okay, I'm nearly out of time, just time at the end for questions. So I've just got a couple of extra slides. There's lots of virtual networking events like this one. This is just an example that I found in LinkedIn. Most of the established networking events in Leicester are going online. So if you're already members, you might be given notice, but if you go and do some searches, you can go and find quite a lot of network groups, and most of them are doing the virtual networking for free because there's no food or event cost involved. I'm sure many of them will carry on doing this later actually. You also should use this time for doing business plans and planning ahead. Obviously, depending on your role within the company, you need to model your cash flow, future income, and marketing strategy. If you're just responsible for marketing, you might just want to focus on that side of it. And again, you can use planning models like SOSTAC or our A10 marketing framework to actually create your business plan. Under the current circumstances, you definitely need to do a worst case and best case scenario because it's going to have all huge implications not only to revenue but possibly you know, staff and other fixed costs. And I've given you some links here on some business models. I actually did the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business training course, and there's some stuff that I was doing in there, and then this is more on the A10, which again you can download. Another thing you might want to look at is opportunities to create new products and services on new markets and locations. So this is a model taken from that blog. This is the ANSOS model and the ANSOS matrix of product and market development. Or you might want to hunker down and just focus on your core markets and actually, instead of diversifying, doing the opposite and just focus on the main thing or your core product and service. I think this is the last but one slide. This is a whole list of learning and free and low cost courses. I will update this with the Chamber and the Business Club because I forgot to add that last night. But here's a whole load of free ones, including our own at the top. If you go to academy.anicca.co.uk, you can register for free access. There's over 100 PowerPoint presentations and slides there. There's some that is locked down. The DMI, Digital Marketing Institute slides, is part of a qualification. So unless you pay for the course, unfortunately, you won't get access to that. And we are running a discount on that qualification if anybody wants the qualification. That course starts in June. This is some of the free resources that you can get from us. So if you go to the Anicca site or to the Academy site, and then also I am going to be giving an hour of my time to any businesses that want it. You can book my time at calendly.com, and I think also there's some one-to-one sessions that Ellie's organising this afternoon. So I think that's my final slide. So I'm going to stop sharing, or if you want to take over, Ellie.
Brilliant.
And then
Thanks, Anne.
we can then answer some questions.
Thank you very much for that. That was really, really thorough, actually. I feel like I learned a lot, and I did marketing at uni. So, yeah, that was really good. Thank you. I'll give you a little clap on behalf of everyone, because everyone else is muted. So we've had a few questions come through on the Q&A, so I'll just pick out a couple, and then I believe you're able to type your answer when now you've stopped sharing screen. So if there's any left from that when Oscar begins, feel free to type the answer to them. So Kerry has asked, can my business have a Facebook page without needing an individual account?
So I think you need to have an individual account to set it up to start with. But then what you need to do then is add a business email address. What I also recommend you do is create a business manager account in Facebook. In a minute, I'll stick a link in for that.
Cool.
There's a blog article that we wrote on how to set up a business manager account, and that gives you loads more permissions. It means you can disassociate your individual account, but it's worth starting that way and then upgrade into a business manager account, and then that will. And if you use the same login as you created your Facebook account, your Facebook page rather, then it will all be linked together. But it just gives you so many more functionalities and features, analytics. It's where you're better off doing all your ads from. So definitely create a business manager account in Facebook. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, account before, and it has been quite simple to do, just to the initial setup. But I know there are a lot more extra options, like you say. It's quite good at its user. So we've got another one here from James. I have a list of connections with over 200 plus PR professionals in the media. However, the organisations who support have stopped activities due to coronavirus. Could you advise about any alternatives we can promote at this time?
So I'm not quite sure of the question. Can you just repeat it, please?
So I believe James is asking of any PR organisations that you could recommend. It might be the opposite way around.
Sometimes there are Facebook groups, but if you're not sort of in the industry, you won't necessarily get added to them. So it depends what your job title is. So if your job title is PR or something like that, I know that my colleagues have got their members of Facebook groups. There's quite a few hashtags to do with journalists requesting information, although I don't know any off the top of my head because that's not my area of speciality, I'm afraid. There are quite a lot of paid tools like Cision or Volio, I think it's called now. I can't remember I know it changed its name. But the problem with some of those are that everybody's email addresses are going to be their work emails. So officially, if they've been furloughed, they shouldn't be accessing their emails. So I think probably Twitter and Facebook's your best way of getting hold of people at the moment. I'm not sure if that's answered your questions, but I think that will, that will help to start with. Are you there, Ellie? Hello, Ellie, can you hear me? Ellie, are you there, Ellie?
Oh, sorry.
Your signal's really bad, Ellie. Hi, Oscar. Can you hear us?
Hi, Anne. Yeah, I can hear you. Right. So, okay. So, yeah, whilst Elle kind of sorts her connection out.
I've just put a link to the setting up a business manager in the chat.
Real cool.
Okay.
Can you see? There's a few coming in on the Q&A section. Can you see that at the bottom?
Yeah, I'll just do those now. Okay. Just go down. So the next question was, I like the idea of email marketing, how I don't have a list. How would you approach this activity given this limitation? Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something that you need to work on. I mean, you will have a list of some contacts already. You probably could do some very low cost advertising to get a link, but then if you're doing that, it's a bit of a chicken and egg. There are places that you can buy email lists still. But you might find that they may be £250, 1,000. So you probably need to check whether those are for consumers or for businesses. But the best way of attracting, getting email lists is to have something on your website that people want to sign up for. And also, by giving content away, maybe having gated content like that. But it is quite a slow burn to build up a list. But also, once we get back to more networking, you can ask people for email addresses and see whether they'll let you send them stuff. Yeah, a bit of a mixture of answers there. Organic marketing. Okay. So
sorry,
for example, organic. Yeah, we lost you for a little while. So organic is where something grows organically, so you don't normally pay for it. So it tends to be things like organic search engine optimization, or so organic search results, which are the ones on the left rather than the paid ads, or organic social. So it's a term that we often use to describe marketing where you don't actually have to pay. What are my thoughts on Instagram? Instagram is excellent, particularly for B2C. I've actually had really good results on getting my A10 marketing framework through Instagram. The only problem with Instagram and Facebook is that you have to build up an audience, and actually only a small proportion of your audience will see your posts, so you probably will need to spend some money on paid advertising in social. But it's just a matter really of a lot of it is the quality of your photography in Instagram, but Instagram you're probably getting more reach with your followers than you would be in Facebook. So I think if you've got something that's very photogenic, Instagram is a really good starting point. I'm just very, very concerned about the time and whether we've got any more time for any of these. Let me just pick on another one. How often you should be reviewing your keywords for current Google ad campaign that we're running. Addition of negatives should be on a weekly basis. I would definitely do a review now, just in case you've got anything running that's not appropriate. And then probably with regards to key phrases that I've got low click-through rates, or I've got, aren't doing very well, or low. So the optimization process, as we call it, probably weekly, maybe once a month, depending on how much data. The more you spend, the more often you need to do it, because you'll be collecting more information. Yeah, I think we are recording this, and therefore we should be able to send it out afterwards. I think that's probably me done, because I know that, is it Oscar that starts next?
Hi, I'm Sam, with Matt, obviously Elle's colleague. Elle's having internet problems, so I've agreed to take over, continue hosting the session.
I'm quite happy to answer some more of these questions via chat. So
Yeah.
I'm not presenting anymore, so I can pass over. Are you stopping the recording and restarting it?
No, I think Oscar can or should be able to come back in and carry on, continue. And then, yeah, Anne, if you've got capacity to continue answering those Q&As. If not, we can collect them following this session and get them out somehow through perhaps social media.
No problem. I'll carry on answers. So I'm going to duck out Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for
Thanks again, Anne.
coming in, and please take advantage of all the offers that were in the end of the presentation.
So, hi everybody. Hi Sam. Are you happy for me to kind of intro?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So a big thanks to Anne first, because that was a really good presentation. I'll definitely be looking into some of those kind of resources and stuff that she sent through. So you know, really appreciate her time for that. That was really informative. So I'm going to basically do a kind of relatively short and snappy presentation about some quick wins that you can look at doing at the moment. So most of them should be applicable to kind of businesses at any sort of stage that you're at, whether it's kind of right at the beginning or kind of you're well established. So I guess a couple of just quick bits of housekeeping. Please do put some questions through as you're listening, and we'll come on to those at the end. I'll leave some time to do that. And I think Elle or Sam will kind of pick out any sort of key ones that I miss, and I'll hang around to do some to answer any remaining on the chat at the end as well. And if you have any connection problems, one of the team either let me know or mention it in chat. I might not be able to see the chat whilst I'm presenting, and obviously I can't see any of your screens. So if someone just kind of shouts if I have any connection problems, then let me know. Okay, so this talk, as I say, digital quick wins, and it's kind of getting your house in order. And who am I? So I'm Oscar, and I'm a pay-per-click specialist. So I've been doing pay-per-click advertising for about 7 years. I've done a whole variety of different kind of exposure across digital, but pay-per-click is the area that I kind of specialized in the longest. We've got a very small team. We're just proud to be kind of just very specialist, focusing on that, pay-per-click kind of as our core thing. And we work with charities and businesses in the UK and elsewhere. I personally have had various side projects and played around with different things, from selling t-shirts online to search arbitrage for affiliate programs from retailers through Google search. So played around with lots of different business ideas and really enjoy doing that. So have become more and more involved with the kind of Leicester startup scene and community, and trying to kind of support other people however I can. And it's fantastic to see the whole thing starting to emerge, and more events like this where we can kind of share insights and that sort of thing. So that's really good. So this is a quick run through of all the quick wins that I'm going to go through in this presentation. So some of them kind of either touch on things that Anne had mentioned as well, or a kind of just a slightly different take on them. So I think it's kind of nice that I'm sure we'll be able to kind of share this webinar is being recorded, and we can share slides. So the combination hopefully brings some good insights to everybody listening. So that's the full list. That's what we're going to go through. We'll go through each one by one. So I'll just kind of run you through them, and then at the end we'll just do a recap, and then we'll go on to some questions. So I think the first thing that I'd just like to mention, which is something a friend of mine, Johnny from Seed Creativity, and a branding agency in Leicester, told me in the presentation he did once, which is your website is your hardest working employee. So, well, why is that? So it works 24/7. So unlike you or me, it's always on as long as your servers don't break. It tells your brand story. So if you spend the time, kind of put the work into it, it can convey exactly who you are and what your message is very succinctly. It's available across the world, or at least most of the world, and it can engage with thousands of people per day. So this is a really important concept, I think, to think about. And if we do think about your website as your hardest working employee, then you should look to invest in your website as if it's an employee. So what does that mean? Well, you should be looking to improve your website skills. So are there new bits of functionality you could try? So chatbots or content or different kind of user flows through the site. Can you improve efficiency? So can you make the website faster? Can you improve the kind of conversion rate optimization, sort of user experience, user interface across your website? Can you make it more mobile friendly? Things like that are worth considering. And the last one is tracking results. So are you able to monitor and report on what's happening on your website? And we'll come on to some of these in a bit more detail. So if your website is hard to use, you'll drive visitors to it, assuming you're doing marketing and trying to promote what you're doing, but they won't take the action that you want them to on your website. Here's an example. This is a real kind of live website that you can visit. I believe it's potentially a Danish website. It looks a bit like a kind of eBay Gumtree sort of mashup, and I've used this just because it's kind of they probably get quite good traction just because it's very different to what you normally see websites looking like, but it's quite hard to navigate as a user. Okay, so we'll come on to some quick wins that you can try. As I say, I think some of these will be more applicable to some businesses than others, different stages, but in my experience, a lot of these things are either not set up at all or not quite right for businesses of quite a wide range of sizes. So well worth at least going back and checking and saying, okay, have we actually got that in place? Is that up to date? So the first one is about optimizing Google My Business. So Anne touched on this one about keeping your business results up to date. So I've used the Curve Theatre as just an example of this. So this block on the right here that you see, that's the Google My Business kind of panel. And you can get, once this is set up, you can control a lot of the content that appears here. So you can add imagery, you can add information, your phone number and all that kind of stuff. This is useful for lots of different reasons, but that's what it is. So you can see that there. So as I say, if you haven't got one set up, you should set it up. Essentially, the main requirement for a Google My Business account is that you have a physical address that you can list. It still applies to kind of e-commerce businesses or international businesses, and it's free. So, you know, well worth doing. Ensure the information is up to date. So if you've already got it, update any information that needs updating. Make sure that all the phone numbers are accurate and consistent across the web, and collect some reviews. So people, if they've never seen you before and they search for your business or your organization, and they see some positive reviews, that's going to really help build that initial trust and make you more legitimate in their eyes. So, you know, even if getting a few is well worth doing. So there's some tips for you about Google My Business. And, you know, this is prime Google real estate, so make sure you use it. Quick win number 2, get your Google Analytics right. So this is, Google Analytics is a bit of a rabbit hole. There's loads of really useful guides, which I'll touch on one that we've used before that's quite useful. But, you know, getting this right is something we often see kind of businesses either not using it at all or using it, but there's room for improvement. So it's an incredible source of insight on your website. If you don't, you know, use analytics to the full already, you can assess who your users are. Essentially, I use it as a kind of a tool to answer questions. So even in Anne's presentation, she was showing some examples of questions that you can answer with the kind of information that you get in analytics. So which marketing channels work best? What's the impact of certain, you know, global events? Which are your best performing pages? That kind of thing. So you can use that data to know where to focus your attention. So the first thing, which is a a relatively simple housekeeping point, but is something that most people overlook, which is making sure you use views correctly in analytics. So kind of, I think the best practice way that I'm aware of is that you should almost treat it like you would a development process for a website. So you have kind of a development environment, a staging, and then a live kind of environment. So your all website data, you should have a view that's essentially completely unfiltered. So it's just sort of out the box analytics setup configuration. And then you have a kind of testing view and then a master view. So your master view should be the one you used the most. So you should filter out your IP address, any bot traffic, anything else that might skew your data. Because, for example, if your own team locally spend a lot of time on your website, that's going to skew all your session stats. You know, you might have an average session duration of 25 minutes. And that's because your team are going on your website and then just sitting on the website and kind of, you know, updating content and stuff like that. So ensuring that's filtered out so that you're just seeing kind of the external data from that is really important. The testing view is a useful way of essentially applying new adjustments or configurations in analytics before you set it live, just in case it's wrong or it breaks some of the data. It's just a useful best practice. So that's just kind of a quick tip that if you're not already using that process, well worth getting that set up. This one from Distilled we've used before, and I think is a really good analytics resource. There's plenty out online, but this is I was quite impressed with this when we went through this. So this talks about what I've just spoken about, the different views. There's various other things that it talks about in here, such as getting your website search set up. So, for example, if you've got a search bar on your website, you can record the queries that people are typing into your website, and they'll appear in analytics. So, you know, that's a really simple thing, but it's something a lot of people just skirt over. And that kind of thing can be really useful for looking at things that you're either missing or you could target on your website. So if you're a retailer, maybe people are looking for a product that you don't stock, or a kind of, you know, a size that you don't have much of, and that can give you some insights to think about stocking or messaging on your site. So well worth checking this out, and, you know, applying some of their lessons is kind of a step-by-step, so worth working through some of it, probably not all at once, but just, you know, use the resource. So quick win number 3. This is about linking Google products. So basically, Google has this amazing capacity to share data between its products for your own accounts. So obviously you need to make sure that, you know, everything you're doing is GDPR compliant, and you're kind of, you know, making users aware of where the data is going. But the capacity to do this is really, really good. So if you view Google Analytics as this kind of data hub for your website, there's loads of other stuff that can get fed into that one place. So these are kind of some of the main analytics products that you can link together. So Google Ads, Google Search Console, Google Sheets, and Google Data Studio. So just a handful of examples of things that you could do. So if you link Google Search Console with Google Analytics, then within your report, you'll be able to see some of the queries that people are using when they visit your website, and kind of there's various other metrics that it will pull through from Search Console. Just a really useful way to get some kind of feel for which queries are driving the most volume, where, you know, what's the behavior looking like, that sort of thing. A simple one is to link Google Ads and Analytics. So if you're running Google Ads campaigns, you can see all of your campaign data down to a keyword level and search query level within Analytics. So again, it just means that you can more easily see what those keywords and campaigns are doing in terms of performance. You can see cost versus sort of revenue or whatever goals or that you're tracking. You can see how long they're spending on the site, what their bounce rate is, all those sort of really useful stats to see what's working and what isn't working. And the last one here is visualize your data in beautiful real-time reports with Google Data Studio. So Data Studio is relatively new Google product. It's probably a year, maybe 2 years old. I forget exactly how old, but it's a really good way of visualizing data in lots of different ways. So you can create simple dashboards to show data, and it will pull from Google Analytics, from Google Ads, from Google Sheets. So, you know, if there's things that you want to show or just to update automatically, you can link those in and it will just refresh on its own. So let's say you set up a simple Google Ads report to monitor campaign performance, then you can set basically a time block so that you can choose your date range. So, and it will update in real time those stats on the report. So you can click the report link on Data Studio and sort of change your date range to the last 7 days and it'll update the stats. So there's lots of free templates. Both Google have free templates, and lots of agencies and freelancers have made kind of simple free templates that you can use online. So have a look. There might be some that you kind of can go, oh, that looks good. Make a copy of the template and then just import, you just link your own analytics account to it, for example, and it will show that data. So well worth looking into that. And as I say, linking those up is worth the time. Okay, so quick win number 4 is to test your website on real users. So I suppose there's lots of ways that you can approach website testing or app testing. These are just 3 relatively simple, high-value activities. So the first one is there's lots of software on the market for sort of heat mapping and screen recording software. The results of this kind of stuff can be quite mixed, depending how you use it. But what I found is that they can at least hint at interesting things. So Hotjar, as an example, has a free tier where you get a kind of certain amount of recordings for free. You could set it up to, say, run on one page of your website that you're really interested in. What's interesting about that is you can see how it performs on different devices and also how people behave. So, you know, are they scrolling really fast? That might suggest that there's too much text on the page. Are they stopping at key areas and spending some time there and then leaving because maybe there's something in that copy that sort of caught their attention, but it didn't kind of really do it for them. So it can be a really useful sort of mechanism for kind of giving you a feel for areas that you might need to look at in more detail. The second one is in-person tests. So this is kind of a combination. This is actually 2 different approaches. So one is just asking people, talking to people. So I'm going to show a quick video in a minute about something called the MOM test, which is a useful sort of framework for thinking about this. And also give people tasks to complete. So, you know, you sit down with your friend and you kind of say, look, can you just go onto this website and I want you to buy this, or I want you to download this ebook, and then watch them do it. And if you watch over their shoulder, you get a lot of interesting insights, because are they getting confused at certain bits? Are they kind of getting stuck? All of that kind of stuff is really useful feedback. And the last one is user testing websites. So if you can't find people in person to test with, then these are a kind of good alternative. So there's various different sites that offer them. You set up in a similar way to how I've described with in-person tests. You can set a task for a person to complete for you, and then they will go away and find people who kind of fit your rough demographic that you provide, and they'll do a screen recording with commentary as they're talking through it. So they'll go, okay, I'm on, you know, example.com and I've been asked to download this. I'm confused by this bit. Or maybe I click here. So I would recommend, if you are going to go down that route, I've personally found you don't really need more than sort of 3 recordings at a time to get some really useful sort of themes and insights. So that's well worth looking at. the MOM test, I'm actually just going to share the link afterwards rather than show it now because I'm conscious of time. So in a kind of nutshell, so this is based on a book by Rob Fitzpatrick, I think it is, and the basic theory is that if you go and ask your mum for feedback on your website or your business idea, she'll just kind of won't give you real feedback, like useful feedback, because she doesn't want to hurt you and she doesn't want to kind of derail you, but also because you're asking the wrong questions. So the key thing is to focus on people's habits now and the problems they face and their behavior in the past. So, you know, how often do you do this? Does this annoy you, this thing? Do you use these kinds of products to find X? You use that information based on actual behavior rather than saying, would you use an app for recipes? Oh yes, of course I would. So it's basically about asking the right questions to get the right kind of feedback to guide your decision-making process. So as I say, I've added the link. This is just a good YouTube video summary, but as I say, it's based on a book. So I'll share the link in the chat, but also, you know, I'll share my slides so you can go and watch it at your leisure as well. Okay, track key website actions. So we're up to quick win number 5. So there's a few different ways you can do this, but I recommend that you're looking to get events and e-commerce data into analytics. Really, that's your kind of goal. So analytics events are very versatile. You can track everything from when someone submits a form, when people make a purchase, how much the purchase was worth, when people click buttons, when people watch videos. There's loads. The recommended way these days to do it is through Google Tag Manager. So if you don't know what Google Tag Manager is, it's another free Google product. It's like a big container. So in pre-Tag Manager world, if you had analytics on your website and you go, oh, I want to track this form, you'd have to add the form tracking code snippet on the back end of your website for every different event that you wanted to track, which obviously takes dev time. It's a bit of a faff. Tag Manager is basically a kind of box that it's a code snippet, it's a container that sits in your website, and then you add everything through Tag Manager rather than onto the website directly. So it removes that dev time component and means that marketing teams can implement tracking directly themselves. Well worth doing. If some of it is slightly more technical than others, so there are plenty of specialists out there who can support with that, but well worth kind of taking the time to get your sort of key website actions tracking accurately. So I've put at the bottom here, be able to answer questions like, so which channels drive sales? So this is a source medium report that you can find in analytics. So here you can see we've got the e-commerce data is tracking through. You can see the revenue, you can see the traffic from each channel, you can see the conversion rate from each channel. So that gives you a lot of, you can answer that question about which sales are coming from where, and there's interesting differences between conversion rate and time on site and that sort of thing. Which channel drives newsletter signups? So again, this is the same report, one of many useful ones in analytics. You can see here that there's a goal in analytics here set up, which is actually based on an event to track when somebody completes a newsletter sign up on the website. So again, you can see, all right, okay, interesting that, organic drives kind of similar numbers of newsletter signups to direct traffic, and, the other channels don't do a whole lot for that comparatively. So you can answer these interesting questions when you've got that stuff tracking. Okay, so Anne touched on this, and as a caveat, SEO isn't our kind of primary speciality. So we know the basics, but we wouldn't call ourselves kind of SEO experts compared to other people and agencies. So these are just a few quick ones to think about. I would say this is a big topic, SEO. So there are various quick wins you can look at within SEO, but you can very much go down the rabbit hole. So it should fit into your business strategy, as you know, how SEO fits into your wider strategy as well. So Google Search Console, really useful to get set up and to kind of make sure that it's working properly if you haven't already. It's kind of analytics plus for SEO, basically. You can see errors, you can see lots of interesting insights from there. You can add a sitemap to Search Console as well, which just gives Google kind of an outline of the structure of your website. Test website speed and kind of improve that. So that's, you know, Google does take into account website speed when it comes to sort of rankings. So there's lots of free speed testing tools online that you can use, which should give you a guide as to where you can focus your attention. Make your website more mobile friendly. So again, Google's got a free test online. I've linked it in that slide. There's lots of other ones, just testing that it works properly on mobile, as you'd expect. It's just a, you know, a quick win there. Optimizing page titles and descriptions. Obviously, your content will appear, you know, with a title and description in Google organic. So optimizing those for your highest volume pages is a sensible approach. You know, there's a few good guides on this. Brian Dean's got a good guide, which is sort of free to access on his blog. But, you know, it's looking at your existing page titles and go, can we make these more exciting? Can we make these more clickable? Can we make it kind of listy, a bit sort of, you know, almost BuzzFeedy, but, you know, a bit more useful than that, but sort of 10 things you wouldn't believe about, you know, SEO or whatever. Just testing and optimizing those can really help boost your click-through rate and help rankings. Find and fix broken links. So we had someone we worked with had a link on Wikipedia to them. It wasn't their own Wikipedia page, it was elsewhere. And Wikipedia links, just like, you know, newspaper links and others, that they carry some value as a backlink. So but the link was going to basically a non-existent page on their site. So there's lots of tools online that you can use to find these, and basically just getting them fixed. So trying to kind of setting up redirects, that sort of thing, just getting all of that fixed will help, and is worth doing. Okay, number 7, create a free download. So I'm aware that obviously organizations have a very kind of, there's a spectrum of how much content they have, from none to loads. But if there's a way that you can combine or rework content that you already have in an area of expertise and then turn it into an ebook or a free download of some sort, this is well worth doing. It's, you know, because you're providing value to people. It's a great way to start a conversation. So can you rehash presentations that you've done? Can you combine sort of very popular blog content into some sort of more snappy or long form, or a checklist, or, you know, a guide of some sort? Well worth doing. You could chuck it on a landing page, you know, ask for an email, create it as sort of gated content, and then that can act as kind of a lead magnet. So, you know, worth doing. Probably more applicable to B2B businesses, but B2C can use this kind of approach as well if you're smart about it and you're providing content that is really useful to other people. Okay, quick win number 8. So a Google alert for key terms. This is a simple one. You can basically set up notifications when there's new sort of news items or similar about the topics that you mention. You would need to play around with this to get the settings right. You don't want to get bombarded with alerts, but equally, you know, for your own business name or competitors or industry terms, and, you know, Anne touched on this a bit in her talk as well. You know, worth doing. Doesn't take long to play around with that. So just to keep you kind of on top of the news. So quick win number 9, run a competition. So this can be a really good way, a bit like the sort of lead magnet quick win. This is just can be a very effective way if you pitch it right in terms of the giveaway is attractive and you know what you're going to do with the people who contact you in terms of starting that conversation. It can be a great way to generate interest. So, you know, you could give away free services or give away free product or whatever, and they, you know, enter by providing an email address, and then you can kind of, you know, nurture those and see if anything comes of that. So worth trying that as well. Okay, quick win number 10. I couldn't find any good gifts for the last couple of quick wins, sorry. The topics were too difficult to find one. So
you're clearly a fan of golden retrievers, Oscar.
Well, they're just so photogenic, that's all.
There you are, I've got one myself.
So this one is a slightly more kind of strategic quick win. So this is about reverse engineering growth. So to kind of go back to the basics, so to win online as a business yourself, you have to be clear on kind of which marketing channels you're going to focus on, because there's 1,000,001. What results each marketing effort is going to bring you, and you know, therefore what budget to assign to those, and how and when to assess the results. So whether it's a channel you kind of have done for a long time and you know it works really well, or if it's a new channel that you're trying to test, you know, you need a framework to look at it, and it needs to fit into your wider objective. So Noah Kagan, who runs various digital businesses but puts out lots of quite good content, he has this what he calls a quant-based marketing approach. So he basically, I think this was a few years ago now, for one of his businesses, had an objective of getting 100,000 users over 12 months. And that was his goal for the whole team. So he was very clear on what he wanted to do. And so he used that and worked back. And he went, well, where are we going to get those users from? So, I mean, you can ignore a lot of the sources. It's just as an illustration, but you could, within half an hour, knock something similar up in a Google Sheet and look at, okay, based on what we've seen before, or based on what we predict, you know, it could be sales, it could be new customers, it could be a combination. You know, where do we expect to find these people based on the information that we have access to? And some of that you might be able to get from analytics. So your Google Ads, you might have a very clear idea from your data that, you know, on average, we convert at, say, 5%. And so, you know, okay, with this spend, we're likely to see this kind of sort of impact or kind of return based on whatever metrics you're looking for. So this is a useful framework. You can get this sheet for free if you enter an email, but this is literally it. So, you know, you're better off just copying the columns or doing something similar, and just using your own kind of sources of traffic that you're looking for. So worth doing, just even to get the conversation started about where are we going to focus in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Okay, so go back to those now. So that was the list that we've run through. So there's, you know, kind of lots of different ones to look at. Some might be more useful and relevant to you now than others, but hopefully there's kind of something for everyone there. There's one bonus win that I wanted to mention, which is using integrations to speed up workflows. So I've been doing a lot of this recently with mixed success, but there's a few platforms that are well worth looking into. So if you use some of these platforms a lot, so you have a CRM or you have different platforms you use, go and see if there are integrations or there's, you know, Zaps for it on Zapier. So you can pull your social information into a Google Sheet. You can link Salesforce and Google Ads to share data. You can automatically load up receipts that you take pictures of to your invoicing platform. You can get alerts in Slack from your customer support products. So there's loads of really good things that can just speed up, make your life easier and speed things up. So worth looking into those. Okay, so that's me. So I'll stop my screen share now.
Thank you, Oscar. Again, a little clap on behalf of everyone listening. Thank you for that. Apologies, I did miss quite a significant chunk at the start due to predictably bad internet. So I've seen that there is a Q&A that has come through throughout that. Again, anyone listening now and wants to ask a question, just drop in the Q&A bot and we can ask. I know we're running a little bit behind schedule, so if you do put it in there, it'd be great, Oscar, if you could type out the answers if it feeds into Tobias's time. But the one question that's in at the moment is from Kerry, and it's, can you feed info from Hotjar into Google Analytics?
Hi, Kerry. So as far as I know, I don't think so. It might be different with the pro version, and if anybody else knows that I'm wrong, shout.
No, you can't.
Okay.
You're right. You're right.
Thanks, Anne. that answered that one quickly. I did just have one myself, just thinking quite holistically for anyone listening, is with anyone that's not utilising a website for e-commerce at the moment, and just simply has a website to sort of advertise their business status, what do you think is the best way to use your website at the moment in terms of purpose? If you're a business that's not able to operate under the current conditions, and you don't want to say you're open for business because you can't provide for that demand, but you don't want to have that negative, like Anne was saying, that messaging that's sort of constant around COVID at the moment online, what do you think people could be doing with their website to sort of harness a message that fits right?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it's very, I think going back to kind of a strategic view is always the sort of boring but most important answer. So, what is your kind of website's function? Is it just to showcase kind of the sort of work that you do and your values? Is it slightly more direct in terms of starting conversations? I think giving away stuff that's valuable to start a conversation is often useful regardless of the business that you're in. Projecting a message, even if it's not around the current situation, as you mentioned, and said, it's kind of a bit of a deluge. So is there a way you can be creative around that? So I've seen some kind of quite fun little sort of website, what are they? They're kind of like mini games or quizzes or, content that's kind of uplifting in a different I think that is always useful just because you're building a bit of brand equity, even if it's not soft, there's no direct outcome from it.
Absolutely.
Kind of your sort of vision, I suppose.
Okay, cool, thank you. We've had no major question coming. Andrew from, someone has just posted one. Greg has said, coming back to Tag Manager and tracking conversations, is it possible to track conversations if the conversation happens on a third-party site? For us, our user journey takes place on our website up until the final step. So at present, we are tracking our traffic and where it comes from, but we don't know our conversion rate.
Yeah, so this is a very good question and is tricky. So, Greg, it basically depends on the provider. So there are some providers who will integrate, and so actually, first step would be to look up, okay, whoever the third party is, do they have kind of an analytics integration or a link with Tag Manager that you can use? Some do. So thinking about like Eventbrite, for example, they will tie things up nicely. If they don't, then you may be able to look at a workaround. For example, if there's the potential to users on your website, they leave to third party, when they complete the transaction, can you send them back to your website? And basically that confirmation page that they land on post transaction, you might be able to send some data through Tag Manager, through the data layer, basically. So, if it's a sale or similar, you can push that information into analytics. So those would be the two areas I'd look at.
Cool. Thanks, Oscar. Just conscious of time, there's a couple more that have come through, but as of that, if you could type any answer, that'd be brilliant. And I think Andrew has asked a question there about any links to any of the platforms you referred to, and so people can have a play around. So for everyone listening, if you're interested in trying any and Oscar responds to that question, might be worth looking at the answer to that one. So I'm going to thank you very much, Oscar. I'm going to segue into Tobias now. That was very smooth. I can see him there already. Morning, Tobias, just about anyway.
Hello.
How are you?
All good, thank you.
I think this transition is going smoother than Oscar's. So if anyone was on the line, was not on the line about 45 minutes ago, there was a bit of technical issues. So I believe you've got some slides you're going to share, Tobias, is that?
Yes, shall I get those up now?
Yes, and having spoken to Tobias earlier this morning, there's the way this is going to be is a bit more interactive in the sense of Tobias only going to talk for around 15 minutes. Am I right?
Yeah, well, it depends on how many questions, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then it's sort of open to you in terms of bringing your experiences and seeing
Yeah.
Tobias can support.
So when we get to that business model slide, I'll just ask you to come on to help
Fab.
up.
That's cool with me.
And things. Okay.
Brilliant. Over to you,
So here we go. My session's all about business model innovation, and I'm the Business Innovation Fellow at the University of Leicester in the Leicester Innovation Hub. So this is what we're covering in today's session. We're going to be looking at how to innovate business models, how to do design thinking, how you pivot business models, and how you disrupt traditional business models. Bit more about me. I've got a background in market research and startups. So that informs a lot of my thinking that I'll be sharing with you today. So what is a business model? In one sense, in its simplest sense, it is just a table with all the segments of your business model laid out. So instead of a business plan being a long document, this is a one-page business plan. It's a method that was created by Alexander Osterwalder in partnership with it was co-produced by 470 people. So while it seems a very simple thing, it's actually a very sophisticated thing, and that's what I'm going to be talking about shortly. But before I do that, I just wanted to get a sense of if you all open up your chat for a moment, I'd like to know who has heard of Business Model Canvas first. So if you just write in yes heard into the chat, and then Elle will be able to tell me how many yes heards we've got. We're doing a manual count. Rough is fine. You need to unmute yourself, Elle, if you're talking.
Apologies. There are about 5 no's and the rest are all yeses.
Okay, so a lot of people have awareness of it. And then I'd like, the second question is, yes, used. So how many of you have used it? Just write in yes, used into the chat.
Yes, 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 no, yes, 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 yes.
A mix, is it 50-50, something like that?
Yeah, I would say the yeses and used just about win.
Okay.
By the looks of it, a lot of the people that you had said yes to knowing it have also used it.
Okay, well, that's really helpful. That helps me just know what sort of audience is out there. So, and I should say, of course, thank you for watching as well. So, right, let me just get rid of my screens now. So, what's so great about the business model canvas? So I was saying it's not just simply a flat table, it's a dynamic method. There's dynamic relationships between the segments. There's a set of rules for how they're used. There's a dynamism in how you do it. Often you have a canvas on the wall and it's a group session and people use post-its to get their ideas up there. So that's dynamic in terms of how you fill it in, but there's also dynamic relationships between the parts of the canvas. So that's what we're going to be talking about through the session. It also does produce amazing results. I've used this with lots and lots of businesses, and it is the results are very amazing, and they're lovely sessions to do with people. And because of this, and because people have found it so useful, it has become a very popular tool, which has gone global. And it's very interesting to see that most of you have heard of it, and most of you that have heard it have used it. So I've got 3 what's so great then slides. This is the second. So the canvas doesn't talk about products and services. It doesn't talk about your what. It talks about your value proposition, which is the value that you are delivering to your customer. So it's very customer centric. It's to do with giving your customer what they want and how they want it. And we also consider and observe our customer. And yeah, there's other bits to mention at the end in relation to customer centric and testing, which we'll talk about a bit later. What's so great then, this is the third slide on this. There's a promise that if you use this tool, you will be able to deliver greater value to your customers. You will be able to harness partners in your business model to deliver the value in your business model. So you don't have to do everything yourself, which again is it's a different attitude and a different dynamic to other processes. It encourages you to find ways of reducing your costs so that you have a lower cost structure than your competition, which again enables you to outperform them. It encourages you to lock in customers for a long time. It encourages you to create automatically recurring revenues, which again, these are all signs of modern, healthy digital businesses. So it has that value system. And potentially using the business model canvas, you can come up with business models that have no limits to growth and protect the markets. So that's the promise. That's what's possible if you get good at creating business models. So it's not just about using the tool once. When we do business modeling sessions, it's about becoming really good at creating clever business models. So the goal when you use the canvas isn't to create, today our goal is to create our business model. That's not the right attitude. The right attitude is, let's keep at this, let's keep tinkering, and let's get good at creating great business models. And that links on to the next slide. Oh no, the slide after this one. This is a slide on how to use it. It was created by Strategizer. If you go to their website, you will see resources. You can sign up for a large bank of online resources. If you look on YouTube, they have lots and lots of videos, and as well, all the people that co-produced the business model generation method have also got videos and blogs. And because it's become just so popular, there is loads of content out there on how to use the canvas by people who just have used it and think it's great. What I'm going to do with you today is to go through some pivoting top tips, and I think the next slide is all about design thinking. So design thinking is thinking like a designer, and what we mean by that is when a designer is given a brief, they don't go away and come up with a single answer and they go, that's good enough. The design attitude includes coming up with solving the brief from different directions. So you might, if you were designing a building, for example, you might say, what if it was underground? What if it was all smooth, curvy lines? What if it was angular steel and glass? You do it in different styles and different approaches and different materials. You do it small, you do it big, you view it from a number of different directions to find not the best building, but the best way of meeting the brief. And then you would pull together all the elements that met the brief best and that worked best for the users of the building. So that is the design attitude. And when we use that with the business model canvas, we're saying, and you know, you've got the diagram there of the multiple canvases on the wall, all with different answers to the same question. So when we are business modeling, we're producing multiple versions of the business model. And the way we do that is through pivoting. So what is pivoting? Pivoting is when you challenge yourself to produce a different answer and produce a different business model. You change one segment only, and then the rest of the business model pivots around that segment. So the example that we've got up on the screen I took to Loughborough College a number of years ago, and I gave them a business model for a flour mill. Now, I have never seen a residential home kitchen flour mill for sale anywhere. I've never seen this out there, but it is a product that you can buy. You put your seeds into the top of the flour mill, you press a button and presumably choose the grade of flour that you want, and out shoots freshly milled flour. Flour that you won't need to use bread enhancers on because it will contain all the nutrients of the grain. It hasn't burnt it. It's maintained. It's proper flour the way it used to be before everything was mechanized. So we do live in a gendered world, and normally products in the kitchen are purchased by female people in the household, and that is something that you would quite naturally assume. And in this business model, the customer segment, I wrote it as older women that want higher quality flour. That is the customer that this business is going for. They've also got a one-time payment of £120. So that's the business model they were given. And then the pivot was, what if your customers were teenage boys? And at first, people, when you do a pivot, often, especially if it's a challenging one like this, people will sit there and think and scratch their heads. It introduces a lot of pain, mental pain, because this is something that will not necessarily make sense. Often the entrepreneur or the business owner or the business managers don't want to do this pivot. They're not interested in suddenly selling to teenage boys. That's not what they do. So it can produce an awful lot of pain in the room. But during the thinking process, people will start to think about different values. So, if this was for teenage boys, maybe the way we reach them is through different partnerships like schools. So maybe we reach the teenage boys through the schools, and maybe it's not about higher quality flour, maybe it's about health and nutrition. So if it's about health and nutrition, maybe it needs to be sold to teenage boys who care most about their health. So maybe it's a product for elite athletes. So then you can change your key partners again so that you've got some sports partners in there and elite schools that do sports. And suddenly you've got a completely different business model. You might rent out these machines to schools. You might be part of an elite sports program, and all sorts of things can come out. So with pivoting, you never know what you're going to get. You do not know if it's going to be a useful pivot or not. But what you do know is every time you pivot, you learn more. You learn more about how to deliver value to customers and how to create higher scoring business models. So here's an example of pivoting on key activities. Key activities is what you are good at, what you do. And this approach, the business model canvas approach, encourages us to really focus on this question of, to run this business, what do you have to be really good at? So you might have an engineering company where 2 or 3 of the people all have a background in engineering. They're all the product person, and they've developed some wonderful new gizmo or a fantastic new service, and they know what they do, and their key skill is definitely engineering. And then you say to them, well, what if what you were really good at was actually YouTube? And so at first that will cause an awful lot of pain again, but they will then think about, well, okay, so if this business was great at YouTube, it would be like this, and it completely changes the business model and comes up with new stuff. Similarly, you might say, well, what if this was a data company? What if the thing that you were really good at was acquisition strategy, monitoring cost per acquisition, and being really great at pay-per-click spend? So when you pivot, you put in something different into a section and you just see where it takes you. You never know where you're going to go. Here's some examples of pivoting on price. And again, going back to that flour mill case study, that was a fixed single one-time payment price. And actually, customers don't want that kind of price often. There's a different world now where a lot of people are used to getting things for free. And if it's not for free, it's at a low price, or if it's not at a low price, it's at a price that they have some influence in controlling. So, you know, that the price can actually be a site of interaction with the client. So pricing isn't simple. There's an awful lot of ways you can pivot on price and put different things in the revenue stream segment to find different ways of delivering your business. And when you change your way of pricing, it ripples through the canvas and changes other elements. And that is what we mean by pivoting. So what happens then when you've done loads of pivoting and you've produced loads of business models? The next stage is to assess those business models. And Strategize have produced a 7-point assessment tool, which is really useful for creating modern dynamic business models. So that's the method I recommend. You do loads of pivoting and then you assess those business models. The other important thing to consider here is that this is the business model canvas is part of the whole lean startup, lean management world. And the other thing to do with, as well as rapidly prototyping business models, you also rapidly prototype the products and you test those and you take the ones that have market traction and you develop those further. So with lean startup, there's this constant process of build, measure and learn that this tool is a part of. There's some other plugins to the business model canvas in addition to build, measure and learn and the whole lean world. There's also the value proposition canvas. So Strategize have produced 2 books, the second, well, more than that. And the second one was around the value proposition canvas. So that allows you to observe the customer and interact with the customer. And it's also about getting traction from the customer back to yourself. So it's about customer feedback as well. So that is another fantastic tool. There's also the empathy map canvas, which this one has been developed based on one from a website called Explain. And this one was produced by our lovely friends over at DMU. And again, this tool allows you to get inside the head of your customer, really understand them. And when you understand your customer as well, you can produce better business models. So you don't use the business model canvas tool in isolation. It's part of a wider set of business methods and tools. This tool is about producing disruptive business models. And what we mean by that is that often good business models, when they come along, they change the whole market. So there's an awful lot of traditional businesses that do the things that they've always done and they do it the way that they've done it. And then suddenly a new business can come along with a better business model that's making the customer, quite simply, making the customer happy, giving them the way of paying that they want to pay, delivering more value. And what happens from the perspective of traditional businesses that they just see their customers migrate away to other businesses. And the example that I'm going to use today is Zoom. I mean, we are all on Zoom today, and lots of people have been talking about Zooming. Now I'm sure plenty of people are using Skype, plenty of people are using WhatsApp and other interactive digital platforms. So I'm sure all digital platforms have had an awful lot of traction at the moment. But it is interesting to see that Zoom has got something about it that has made it easier for people to use, and it's got greater traction, and everybody is talking about zooming around. So when you create business models, it disrupts old ones, and Zoom is doing that at the moment. So next steps, let's get innovating. If you'd like to innovate your business model, there's lots of ways of doing that. There's lots of resources online, and you can brief yourself. You're very welcome to get in touch with the Leicester Innovation Hub for some consultancy. We've also got a range of funding, so we can provide funded business innovation support. And my part of the Leicester Innovation Hub offer is all around business and marketing, and I can help with product design, testing, customer development, getting investment, and developing your team. When I do business model innovation sessions with them, we call them design thinking sprints, because we try and produce as many business models as possible in these sessions. We've now shifted to an online method for that. So we simply choose a voice connection platform that suits everybody, and then we have our canvases on the cloud, and everybody can see those live. And it's very similar to everyone being in the room at the same time. So it's something that has shifted online quite easily. When you take part in a design thinking sprint, first of all, we map all your business ideas, what you do now, and the business ideas and directions that you're interested in going in. You will learn the Canvas tool by using it. Then we do lots of pivoting. We sprint to produce as many canvases as possible, and then we measure how good they are. So those are all my slides. Thank you everybody for listening. I think I can stop my share now, and we can go back to questions.
Yep. Thank you, Tobias. Again, a clap from the audience. I can hear them roaring. Thank you for that. Yeah, just to echo what Tobias just said, actually, if nothing else, I've been in one of Tobias's sprints before, and they're actually just a good hour or two of fun. If you get nothing else for it, it's interesting to see what you can innovate with and where you can end up from just having a few different people in a room and thinking outside the box. So yes, highly recommend giving it a go. So I'm just going to check the Q&A box now.
Okay, cool. So
we have had no questions through as such. Does anyone want to ask any specific questions? It could be in relation to what Tobias just spoken through, or about pivoting your own model. Have you pivoted before and it was a mistake, or it went well, and you want some more tips from Tobias? Feel free to continue to put them in the Q&A. I think in the meantime, I'll fill some gaps. I think with the pivoting, you said about how there's hostility at times to think outside the box or accept that you need to change or could change. Do you think that this current climate will make people sort of more resistant to it, or actually more flexible?
Well, I guess people are being forced to change at the moment, aren't they? So change is inevitable. So that produces a climate of more people being up for it at the moment, I would say.
That's good to know. So just had a couple come through as I was speaking then. So Tony has said, is pivoting better for established businesses or startups? That's a good question.
So startups find it a bit easier because they're exploring ways forward, and but actually, really hand on heart, if you look at lean startup as a method, it actually is a business management method. So it is particularly useful for established businesses, and often, of course, they can put more spend into their R&D and development. So you can get to the end of all this pivoting, and you can move into a different kind of sprint where you're actually sprinting with the actual prototypes and testing and analyzing customer responses.
Oh, thank you. And I believe it's pronounced Mittal has asked, we are currently planning to pivot and have 2 or 3 ideas. Do we need to do a canvas per idea, even though they connect together?
So actually you have a new canvas every time you change the customer. So you'll have a different, even for one business, you will have a different business model for every customer, and because you need to look after each type of customer, each segment differently. So it's normal to have lots of business models and for those to always be changing and moving forward.
Cool. And just to follow that then, because I've read a few books around how to sort of run a session like this, but I've been in your own ones as well. And do you generally recommend, because I've read before, you can almost pick what is your focus point and your start point on the canvas, but a lot of the sessions I've been in with yourself, it's been you start at the customer and you almost go right to left. So what would you say is the most appropriate way to begin?
I think it's always best to be customer centric, because you can't deliver value to the customer unless you identify who they are first.
Yeah.
But I think as you get further along, you will start canvases from the different segments. And I think the exercises of pivoting as well, you know, you need to go through lots of pivots for every part of the business.
Yeah.
You understand your business model and have explored all the possibilities that you need.
Cool. Andrew has said, I think in this current time, brackets COVID and social distancing, it makes sense to see how you can use design thinking, pivoting, to see how your business could adapt to continue trading. Is this true?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are, there's that phrase, isn't it, to do with knowables, the known knowns, the unknown knowns, all of that. We're in this situation where, you know, we know what our business model was before. We know some of the things that have changed, but this is absolutely the time for exploring the things that you don't know, and that you don't know, you don't know. So it's
Johari's window or something?
I don't.
That's called something.
That one. It was made famous, wasn't it, by a military commander from the US.
Yes. So we've just got another one here from Kerry. I may have missed a bit. This is a good question, actually. You haven't missed this. How might we get involved with one of Tobias's sprints, pivots, support sessions, please?
Yeah, so you can send me an email to tobias.gould@leicester.ac.uk or to the Leicester Innovation Hub email, and we can line you up. I do have an awful lot of people at the moment on waiting lists for sprints. They are very popular. But, you know, I think it's really important that you let us know you want one, and then we will find a way of getting one for you as soon as possible, because at the moment, the University of Leicester really does want to help the local business community as much as possible. So I'm sure if we get more and more demand, we will get more and more people to help you.
Cool. There are, I don't believe actually, so I'm just trying to work out what I've read. Paul has put, I just want to say a big thank you for you all, which is lovely. Thank you. Not a question, but I'll take it. So I think that brings us to an end, and I'm just going to sort of finish what Tobias said there with a thank you to all the speakers, and just to sort of signpost to all the platforms you can contact the speakers on. Obviously, Tobias just given his contact details, but as Anne mentioned earlier this morning, they are running weekly webinars at 9:30 or 9 o'clock, but take a look on their website to find out the details for that.
It's 9.
9, there we go. Got me in the end. Thanks, Anne.
And in fact, I've just given you, I'll put in the chat a link to the webinar page where
Brilliant.
you can download my slides, but also there is the next one, which is using, actually, Oscar mentioned it, but using Analytics and Data Studio.
Cool.
That's what we're doing next Friday. Ed Truman's presenting that. So if you want to sign up for that as well.
Yeah, brilliant. That's in the chat then. Cool,
yeah.
Thanks, Anne. And likewise, Oscar, I don't know if you're still on the line, if you want to shout any contact details for yourself, but also to reiterate what Oscar was saying, he's been working quite closely on the Leicester Startups project and has been doing some talks through that. And as you've probably been able to tell from today, all three are brilliant, engaging speakers. So I'd highly recommend looking at all the activity they're running. Oscar, do you want to shout out?
Yeah, sure. So thanks to everyone. It's been really enjoyed it today, and so Ed, I'll send you my slides so you can distribute those.
Brilliant.
And then you can kind of find me on LinkedIn, or my email's in the slides and that sort of thing. So if I can answer anything else, do.
Cool. Thank you very much, Oscar. Yes, so big thank you to all three. Again, I'll do a big clap on behalf of everyone because we can't hear anyone else. And thank you all very much for joining. I know it's a really difficult time, regardless of what situation you're in. And it's I hope that this has been insightful for getting some good tips on how you can be sort of pivoting during such time. But I hope you will remember to take some time for yourself and enjoy the lovely sun, which I've had to draw my curtains on because it's so bright. So yes, again, as I mentioned at the start, Innovation Friday does run every month. So keep an eye out on our social media of Leicester Innovation and our Eventbrite page to see what will be coming up next month. Thank you all. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and yeah, get in contact if you have any more questions. Thanks all.
Bye everyone.
See ya.
Cheers.